We started way back in February with the Daytona 500 and Brian Twining. We did it. We made it to the end. Phoenix is on the horizon. The last race of the NASCAR season is here. Then we go dark. Then we're back to start in 2025. We'll recap all that was a phenomenal Martinsville.
Incredible.
Uh,
Incredible.
Look at where we are, what we need to do, and where we're headed. All of that and more on today's Angle of Pursuit podcast.
Ross Chastain used the wall all the way around this racetrack.
Logano has been the class of the field.
Check out the big brain on Brad.
Yeah, I need to change my underwear.
Brian Twining, we said it before the round of 8. Give me Tyler Reddick at Homestead. Give me Ryan Blaney at Martinsville. And we win all the money. Win all the money.
Peachy.
And we got it. We got exactly what we asked for. We were under the impression Bell was going to win Vegas. He almost won Vegas. He was the best car. He should have won Vegas.
He was, yeah. He should have won.
Logano obviously sneaks that one out. And then we go to Homestead and all the craziness. And we get the late restart. And Tyler Reddick, there's a will, there's a way. He may be 5 feet tall, but man, there's a lot of will in that guy. And then YRB, just getting it done.
This round set up just perfect for the storybook ending of the NASCAR betting community. And I apologize to people who didn't tail or who weren't aware of grabbing those guys' championship numbers ahead of this round or just even after Vegas. Like, you could tell going into Homestead, and everybody knew who does this, on a consistent basis. Like, that was win or go home for Reddick at that track. And he was really good there last year. So, I mean, you had to add his championship future there. I mean, we also advocated for adding Blaney before that race as well, because he was really good there last year. But we
also
knew
advocated for adding Chase Elliott, even though he didn't win the race.
He was good
right there.
Yeah, 40-1.
For adding Denny Hamlin at 20, 25, when he had been 4, 5, or 6 previous weeks.
Yep.
Obviously, all of them weren't going to get there. But having them all in your pocket sets you up with the leverage to head to Phoenix with a real shot. I'm also very sad looking at what NASCAR did this year and what NASCAR plans on doing next year, replacing Homestead with Talladega. Love Talladega. Yep. Fun to race. Yep. Exciting race. Cars end up upside down, sideways, 3 lanes, whatever.
And that's why it was funny, because after I was
final 8, there should be a lot less nonsense.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm okay with the super speedways happening in the round of 16 or even the round of 12. But when you get into the penultimate round of your playoffs, how in the world do you put the most random type of track in there when these guys are racing for all the marbles, and you're going to put a super speedway in there where it's literally anybody's ball game to win? I just don't really understand the thought process.
Yeah, I'd honestly rather see the round of 12 races be the round of 8, which is New Hampshire, Kansas, and the Roval. At least that feels like, I know the Roval can get weird and kind of has its own quirks, but at least that feels more like
an actual race.
The best drivers are winning, not Chase Briscoe and randomness. And
I was just going to say, like, it blows my mind that NASCAR would make that decision. But if you watch the end of the Martinsville race and some of the stuff that has gone on just throughout the entire year, nothing comes to us as a surprise to me anymore.
NASCAR makes decisions. Even at Martinsville, when it they moved, they reset the field after they fired off, and then they reset it, and they counted as a lap, but it wasn't actually a lap. And they only
the fact that they couldn't see a loose tire on the track on a short track is just mind-boggling.
Well, and didn't YRB lose 4 spots in that whole shenanigans?
Yeah, he lost multiple positions, and Byron lost the lead and the preferred lane to Kyle Larson because of this. They should have never gone back green, because Busch was losing his tire before they got to the restart zone. How does
Or if that
nobody see that?
happens, reset the field the way it was and start again. Don't
Yeah,
count a
but
lap even though they have ran like a quarter of a lap.
I
NASCAR
just,
does stuff that's just like,
yeah,
what
I
are
was
you?
just like, it was unbelievable.
They do
But
stuff that would make the NFL proud, like make random decisions, make
I don't know.
nonsensical.
I think Big Ten officials have one over on NASCAR officials, but that's a conversation for a different day.
As people who
Uh,
watch a lot of Big Ten football,
yeah, I digress. But I think you got to stand back and look at all the chaos that happened and just look at the fact that Ryan Blaney, once again, just class of the field, took everybody to school at Martinsville. And there is no doubt in my mind that this guy is on a mission to try to repeat again after what we just saw. He looks exactly in the same form that he was last year. And again, I don't know what to tell you if you didn't jump on those long championship odds prior
yep.
to those two races.
Yeah, and even if like they didn't get there, the fact that Blaney had a chance to win both of those races,
Exactly.
even if Chase or someone else had won,
Mm-hmm.
the fact that Chase's number was so long and he was legitimately there. I thought he was going to win. Blaney was a little bit behind. Then Larson, of course, was going to win. And we talked about, on Sunday morning, we were texting, a bunch of money came in on Larson and we're like, oh, here we go. And of course, we were naked Larson. Like we have a little bit in terms of championship futures, but in terms of actual races on our tickets on the race and that kind of stuff. Like, and obviously we weren't getting any screaming values on him. So it was interesting. But before we dive into our recap and talk about our bets and everything, I want to give a huge shout out to Panther Rob. He's been
Yes.
riding with us for I don't know, since the beginning, it feels like.
Yeah.
Shares the show around, gives us a lot of props. But shouts to him. Took the information that he got from us, put 4 groups together, and turned $10 into $1,500.
Yeah. Don't go doing this on a consistent
No,
basis, by the way. But
no, talk to Panther Rob because Brian and I aren't going to put you on 4 straight,
no.
or
Yeah.
we may put you on that information and get you in the right headspace. But Brian and I aren't gonna see through the third eye and figure out a way to cobble that together. That was a hell of a bet. Shouts to him. Shouts to the shares and the appreciation and the shout outs and stuff. It really does do a lot because we're trying to build up. I want all of us to win. I told Brian
Exactly.
after
That's the
I
whole
saw
goal here.
that I'd rather you guys win than us
Yeah.
win. Like that's what I want. If you guys can get information listening to us knuckleheads and cobble together stuff and win all the money, amazing. It's exactly what we want to do with this show. So shouts to him. Appreciate you riding with us. Appreciate you crushing the sports books. But Brian, let's look at our work because I'm pretty proud of it. So let me share my screen. We'll start with DraftKings, which man, I feel like we're so close. And like I was telling you before, like I put in some cash lineups together and they're just crushing. And I don't know. Sometimes we open our third eye a little too much on the GPP tournament lineups, but we get to a lot of the good stuff. So Blaney, obviously amazing. Chase Elliott, even more amazing. Chris Bell, Chris
Look,
Bell.
I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I will a little bit. I warned everybody that he was
Uh-huh.
in the danger zone coming
Mhm.
into this race because despite his current form, what we had seen in the past from him at this track where he's won here before, this is not a place where he's been good at. And so I was not surprised to see him kind of struggle. Although there were some markets, betting markets on Sunday morning that even I got attached on because he showed some long run speed in practice. But there's just something about this track where he has a difficult time getting around.
Yeah. He's very boom and bust. He's great to have as an outright if the price is right.
Yep.
And that's why I did jump on the 12. But top 5s, top 8s, top 10s.
Yeah.
Like that's just not really what he does. So like from a DraftKings perspective, it's hard to see him do amazing.
But I mean, with him starting 16th, you would have thought he was going to be a top 10 car. I mean,
you'd think
because he needed a strong performance.
Yeah. Fail melon. That's what they called it. And of course I told us we shouldn't jump on LaJoy's team. 23% for a $5,400 driver seems like a recipe for disaster, and of course he crashes.
I mean, do you expect anything less from Corey Lindrum?
No. I mean, I wrote him up. I was excited about it, and I was stupid. Get yourself a little excited. The Suarez team too. I don't know.
I mean, he was only 10% rostered, so that didn't
No.
really.
No. This was one of our better lineups. The Cindric one, I think that was a you call.
Yeah, I don't look. I thought Cindric would be okay, I guess you would say. Like I was expecting like maybe a top 15, but for him to
if
get
you
a
went
top 5,
if you went Cindric over Suarez, not only did you get extreme leverage with potential ownership,
but massive point
massive difference in terms of day.
Yeah, there was just something about him in practice that looked different from previous trips to Martinsville, and the fact that Blaney was super sporty, and then also from what I had seen with Logano, who, he kind of just swayed in the weeds all day, which he didn't care. He was already locked in, but all three of those cars looked quick.
And shouts to the Kaz man, 6.9, very nice percentage.
He got exactly what we wanted out of him.
Outscoring Kyle Busch by 10, almost catching up to Bubba Wallace.
Oh,
nice
man.
job, Kaz. Truex sunk like a rock. The SVG call was also a really, really nice call on your part.
He just has so the thing that I've noticed about Shane this year is that as we've progressed, he's gotten a little more risk averse at these ovals than he was early in the year. You could tell that he was kind of timid early on, and he wound up getting just caught up with the squirrels in the back because he was making the wrong moves at the wrong time. Whereas now, like, I think he's evolved enough to know like when he can push it, when he has to hold back a little bit. And then you went into a track where it was all about braking. And, he showed it during the Xfinity race too. I think that was kind of the sign to me, like, oh, maybe he's going to be decent enough.
Yeah. Yeah, I think next year there's going to be a nice run where he's going to be like high fives, low sixes, and he's going to consistently outperform that position. And even if he's not cashing like top tens, maybe you can find head-to-heads groups, play him in DK, like find some ways to get exposure to him, because I think he's going to be better than maybe the market will dictate, at least for the first few months.
Yeah, especially with him in a full-time Trackhouse ride. I think that you're going to have to take advantage of the equipment upgrade early in the year at tracks where he hasn't performed in the past. And so, because I think his markets will get shorter as the year goes on.
For sure. Especially like, obviously the road courses he'll be aggressively priced.
He's going to be the favorite.
Places like Martinsville where braking is so important, we'll be able to find value. So let's look at the betting card. Brian Blaney.
I was just going to say, I think this is my proudest betting card I've ever created.
You had a vision for what you expected to happen.
Yep.
You were consistent. You put yourself in a tight window and said, this is who I think is going to be the best car. I'm going to jump all over it. And if he does not win or does not finish in the top 5, then I'll eat my words. But Blaney outright, 6-1. Blaney top 5, even money. Blaney over Larson, plus 110. Cash it. Brian Twining. Like, I'm almost even. I'm very happy to be where I'm at. But you're up almost 85 units.
I'm having a good year, my friend. Yeah. We just talked prior to jumping on here. Yeah, too. And personally, I have evolved as a NASCAR bettor beyond even my expectations.
Not only in terms of like how you're attacking the board, but the ways you're doing it. I think it took us a few years to really like hone in. And that's the thing is like, you don't want to evolve your units and evolve your options and evolve all this stuff until you have a good understanding of how to attack it. And hopefully we're able to kind of speed up that process for you. But there is a learning curve, and there is like, you have to understand what you're doing. You have to understand when to press, when to not press. I need Brian to like hold me back from firing on every driver live because I'm getting antsy about my guy who's sitting back in 6th place. and he's not going to get up there.
Just to interrupt Kyle real quick insight into this is during Martinsville, I got like 3 consecutive texts from Kyle saying, Kyle Larson's coming. He's blah, blah. He's like 12-1. I'm like, no. And then he said something like, oh, Denny's quick right now. And I said, no. And then there was another guy too. I think you had texts about Chase Elliott, like, oh, he's still really fast. And I was like, no, Ryan Blaney to get them. Like you could tell in that last stage, I think the only thing that would have prevented Blaney from winning that race would have been another caution before he got to probably the top 4, because then starting on the front 2 rows, I think he would have been in position to pass everybody. But
and I loved seeing him both be aggressive and push.
Oh yeah,
and bump, whatever he needed to do to get around, but like not dirty, like just good, clean racing, fun racing.
It was short track passing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
so, yeah. So it feels good. Better. Feels good. We crushed it. The last 2 weeks, Tyler Reddick, Ryan Blaney, Cash, and then we flip.
And I gotta say real quick, your bet on the Blaney top Ford market, that was also something that I was considering really highly, just because it limited it was way safer than going with just an outright if you weren't sure and you didn't want to play the 6-1 number, because he could have finished 4th with that.
Yeah, or he honestly, even like you obviously got the top 5 because he won, but like there's a world where it's Larson,
Elliott,
Byron, Chase, Hamlin, freaking the one name that I was worried about was Brad Keselowski, who was looking awesome and I know he faded at the end and obviously ended up kind of where he was supposed to, but I was like, I'm gonna lose this stupid thing because of Brad K. I'm like, so dumb.
Like, yeah, as the race progressed, I was sitting there and I was watching Chase Briscoe, and it was Briscoe and I believe it was like Barry early on. They were just kind of there hanging out, and the thing is that they could not make any headway. They were not moving. They weren't really dropping, and I was not worried one bit about Blaney, because you could tell on the long run nobody could touch his car.
And it was great because issues on pit road didn't matter. Issues with the restart and moving him back 4 spots did
not matter.
He was one of 2 or 3 cars that could get around most people and get to the front. Him, Chase, probably Byron, but Byron was even, I think, a step down between Chase, behind Blaney, maybe Larson.
Yeah, his car fell off a lot harder than both Elliott and Blaney's did.
Yeah, so and obviously, I don't know if Rick Hendrick walked into the NASCAR official's office with a duffel bag and ended up walking out without one. Who's to say? He got one of his Hendrick cars in there, so he's obviously very happy. And Brian and I are going to be hemming and hawing all week about how to get William Byron exposure, because he's the only one we are naked on, and
yeah.
So obviously for the show, Reddick 14, Blaney 28, Blaney 30. See if we can cash those.
I mean, the fact that you have Blaney at 28 and 30 at a track where he's the decided favorite, and it's not particularly close either.
Yeah, it feels good. And obviously, personally, we both have Reddick, we both have Blaney, we both have Logano. So we're sitting in good spots. You obviously have Logano at 14, Reddick at 15, Reddick at 14, and Blaney at 28. So and look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Bell over 1.5. Bang. But Elliott over 1.5. Felt like it should have happened 15 times after winning so early, but he did not get there yet. Logano, bang. Reddick, bang. Keselowski, bang. Hamlin, bang. You had Logano in the Champ 4. I had Logano and Reddick in the Champ 4. That'll work itself out.
I wanted to hit on the Penske thing real quick, just because this is the first time that we're seeing them with 2 Penske cars in the championship in quite some time. I believe I heard today it was the first time since Logano first joined Penske, when it was him and Keselowski, I believe. But a little interesting thing that Logano said during their little media availability today on their live stream is that although they're driving for themselves to win the championship, for that team, and I don't know if every other team is like this, it sounds a lot like both of them, their entire goal is to get one of the other into victory lane to win the championship for Roger Penske. So unlike the HMS drivers where we heard them talking about like, oh, gloves are off, like he's not your teammate today, it sounds like Penske is still all in together, sharing information. They both want to be really good. They both want to be running up front. And, probably if we get to the end and say they're running 1-2, like they probably battle it out. But unlike other teams, it sounds a lot like these guys have been collaborating, and they're trying to come and dust the field together, like we saw when Logano won the championship and Blaney was actually the better car 2 years ago, as opposed to hiding information from each other. So I think that was a little interesting soundbite from Joey to hear, which was quite opposite to what I was actually thinking coming into the week, and that they were actually going to take away from each other's potential success.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. It's also crazy. This would be the third straight championship for Penske if either Blaney or Logano win.
And when you think about how bad Ford started the season too, like that would
honestly,
be
Ford was pretty average to well below, especially with SHR's kind of stuff, and then obviously phasing out. It's really just been Penske and RFK, and that's it.
And RFK has been a freaking roller coaster.
Yeah, they've been a ghost since the second half, outside of a few tracks. Obviously, it was good to see Brad get his win, but yeah. So we're sitting on some nice numbers. We're headed to Phoenix. It's the final race of the year. Are we ready to look at some odds?
Well, let's do it.
All right. So interesting. Books are slow playing a lot this week. Caesars doesn't have championship odds. I was just wanting to put this up for a little kind of idea, but as we head into it, there was a point where you could parlay a championship and a race winner, but it doesn't seem like a lot of books are letting you do that anymore. Blaney is the favorite, 250. Byron at 250. Logano, and then Reddick. Reddick being the long shot was kind of surprising to me. I know they're obviously close, but he was like 350, I think, here. And then he was like usually 3-1 at Caesars.
So here's my take on that. I feel like people are vastly underrating this season's conditions and this season's race at Phoenix. And they're looking at everybody's entire resumes coming into this track, which, I mean, obviously it's a very unique track. Short, flat. You don't necessarily, shorter, flat track. And you don't look at Reddick as somebody that's super skilled here. That being said, like, it's my opinion that in clean air, had he maintained clean air all day, the 45 was the only car that was going to give Christopher Bell a run for his money. Bell probably still wins the race because he made the adjustments, but I think what allowed Christopher Bell to separate himself from the rest of the field was the fact that he started back in traffic and he couldn't make a single pass in the first stage. I don't know if you've watched the race, but he didn't even finish inside the top 10 at the end of stage 1. And so he could not pass. And even in his post-race presser, he made a comment of saying, like, traffic was terrible and passing was almost impossible until we started to work on the car and make adjustments, which allowed me to figure out and get the setup I needed to make the passes. And so, Reddick fell back in the pack with the random ass cautions at the end where he got like back-to-back-to-back yellows because of shitty driving and, people running out of talent. And he couldn't make his way back up the field. So
and to your point, looking at true performance from that race, Bell was number 1. Tyler Reddick was number 2.
Yeah, like Reddick out in clean air in that race, he was extending his lead from everybody. I mean, clean air is king at this track, obviously, but his car is fast enough to be able to dust the field. And, don't underplay the fact that not only does Tyler Reddick have 23-11 and Denny on his side this week, but he has the entire JGR team and Christopher Bell to soundboard off of going into this race to try to win a championship. And when he was already the second best car back in the spring, I fully expect Tyler Reddick to come out with a rocket ship here. And clearly, like, obviously it's probably a little bit of rose-colored glasses here because I'm, a little bit of a Reddick stan, but I just trying to be objective, like he's fast
Yeah.
and you want speed.
Yeah, and I feel like he's been better than maybe his results indicate. Most of his best results have been in the spring race, which is interesting. Although this is his first time
He's
as
never been in the
a
championship race.
playoff driver, and typically they look a little bit the other way when it comes to upgrading
Yep.
those cars. That's why what Chastain did last year was so impressive because
Yeah,
he
exactly.
wasn't souped
And
up.
well, I mean, they might have been because I don't think NASCAR is even looking at the one car post. They probably didn't even do a post race inspection on Chastain last year. They're like, who gives a shit? I mean, we're worried about the champion, not the race winner. So
Blaney got the champion, Chastain. So, and as I was mentioning to Brian, it was the first time that a non-playoff driver has won the championship. That being said, we have some real legitimate contenders this year
yes,
outside of the playoff four at Phoenix. So obviously Blaney is the favorite, 3-1. Bell 4-1. Bell is maybe should be in the final four, depending on how you close your eyes and turn your head. Byron
yeah,
550, Logano 7, Tyler Reddick 7. So Bell being way above the next three is pretty interesting. Then you can get a juicy number on a Kyle Larson, which if you had told you could get 9, 10, 15, I know Superbook has absurd numbers out in the desert.
it's 14 at Superbook.
Larson is extremely compelling. Denny, I'm not betting. I wanted some exposure in case he could race car driver himself around here. Chase Elliott, don't hate it. Wouldn't mind getting my second win with him as long as Reddick or Blaney is winning the championship. Truex, I know there were some juicy numbers on him. If you can get anywhere near 20-1, are you in?
Yeah, so I think he's like, I think the longest I saw was 22 outside of Superbook, that is, which
Yeah,
that
which
number
is
is
its own
ridiculous,
animal.
by the way.
I honestly don't. It's honestly not shocking why they're no longer in business.
Yeah, so I don't hate any of these guys because I do think last year kind of opened Pandora's box to drivers not approaching this weary. Like they're not scared anymore to let the championship guys go by. I'll go- I don't think that type of racing is still around anymore anyways. I mean, after what we saw last week with two manufacturers apparently manipulating the running order. But I have a hard time betting like Elliott or Larson because Byron, for what it's worth, he's been really good here. He's been super consistent. And then on
Yeah.
Christopher Bell, one thing little stat that I looked up today and I found extremely interesting. There has not been a repeat winner at Phoenix since 2014 when Kevin Harvick won races 2 and 3 of a 4-race streak in the desert.
Wow. Well, and he
Now,
was like ridiculously priced. Like he was
oh
plus
yeah,
250 for those races. So like,
yeah.
but yeah, that's still pretty crazy.
So looking at the odds and factoring in Bell not being in the playoffs, I can't get behind betting him to win the race anymore. And I actually think this is a decent week to possibly fade him in matchups at the long odds you're going to get with certain guys.
Now, let me ask you a question about that. Are you looking to fade him now? Are you looking to wait to see if he qualifies really well and then fade him so you can get even a little bit better number? How are you attacking that?
Well, it was interesting to see in the spring, Toyota qualified like balls of fire, except for Christopher Bell. He qualified outside the top 10. He was like the only JGR car. Well, Truex qualified outside the top 10 too, but I mean, he wasn't really a factor going into the race. But Bell qualified like Kaka. He had a great car in practice, but he didn't qualify well. He hasn't been the qualifying maven of late that we saw at the beginning of the year or during 2023. And so I actually think he's a decent bet now against than get it later, because the championship 4 guys, they're all probably qualifying inside the top 10 or high up in the starting grid inside the top 10. But then also you have to account for the championship 4 guys, regardless of where they qualify, they get the first 4 pit selections after qualifying. So not only will Bell possibly not qualify great, but he's also not going to be getting a top echelon pit stall of his choice, because everybody, regardless of where they are, if they're outside of the championship 4, they're picking after the championship 4 guys.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great nugget. So even if he puts it on the poll,
Yeah, he's the 5th pit stall selection if that happens.
Yeah.
Like, so he
That's
does not get the
interesting.
benefit of that first pit stall at Phoenix, which
So
is
are you
probably the
mostly
most
fading
important.
him with either playoff
Playoff
drivers or just elite names?
So I want like long numbers with the playoff guys. I do think that there's some money, like even Logano over Christopher Bell. Christopher Bell has been better than Joey Logano all season, but this is a championship race. Joey Logano has won the round of 8 race twice, and he's won the championship both times. Look, I don't expect him to look like shit or look like he has recently at Phoenix. I expect him to look like championship Joey Logano. Yeah. And if you can get plus 140 or plus 150 on Joey against Christopher Bell, give me that all day.
What about Ross Chastain? Typically does the last 2 years, obviously won last year. Started 25th in 2022, finished 3rd. Even in years where he kind of falters and Trackhouse looks like garbage, they show up here and they know what they're doing. He's 2018 to win the race. Potential head-to-heads, no interest.
No, because of his lack of qualifying at Phoenix, I don't really like his pre-race numbers. I think you got to see how he looks in practice, because if he does have a long run car, I'd be interested in his placement markets or head-to-heads. But also too, when you go back to the spring race, he had a decent finish, but that he was a major benefactor to the string of cautions we had in the last stage as well. Like, I gave a bunch of shit to Chris Buescher and Brad Keselowski from RFK after that race, because everybody looked at them like, oh, hey, great day, blah, blah, blah. Like, they were both fringe top 10 cars until they made all that track position up because of the random cautions that came about. And then, just in cleaner air, they were able to run faster when they weren't necessarily that good at the track that day. So I think the same could be said for Ross Chastain. I don't think he has the same speed this year that we saw in 2023, or that we kind of saw at the end of the year last year where he came out and he won this race. And then look, Reddick, Byron's back for a second feast this year. I think he's going to be way better than Chastain. Reddick is going to be a rocket ship. Ryan Blaney is going to be an absolute monster. And I think, at least with Reddick and Blaney, they're both crazy enough that I think they wouldn't allow Chastain to win again if it came to that. Like, both of them would be like, F this guy, get the hell out of the way. I want my cake and I'm going to eat it too.
Oh, man. 5th at Darlington, 4th at the Glen, 1 Kansas, 7th at Vegas, 8th at Martinsville.
That's the thing, though. He's been there. Like, he hasn't been fast. Like, last week, he wasn't fast. Like, even, okay, Joey Logano got a top 10 last week. Was he a top 10 car? Probably not.
Yeah, but Logano always shows up and gets a top 10.
Oh, that's what I mean. He was like a 12th or 14th place car. So, like, when you look at Chastain, he really wasn't great. I don't know. I think his number is too short, and they're baking in what he did last year into this price. If he was 30, I would consider it.
Yeah, he should be like in the Gibbs, Keselowski, Buescher section.
Exactly. That's where he should be priced. I would bet Chase Briscoe at 40 over Chastain.
Brian, this is our last time
you're
to
gonna...
bet Briscoe, SHR, Phoenix.
That'd be one hell of a send-off.
Yeah.
You might have to do it, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. I know so in terms of outrights, is there any outrights you're placing as we sit here right now? Anybody that you're even considering putting on the card?
Well, as we talked about, as we've evolved as bettors, the fact that we're holding championship futures on 3 of the 4 guys, it makes almost 0 sense for us to bet an outright at this moment.
Let's say you didn't have any, or maybe you have like a Logano that you bet early in the year and haven't really added, or maybe you added just Blaney after
Mhm.
Homestead because you saw how fast he was and thought maybe there was a chance, and it was 35. Is there anyone in terms of a race winner that you're like, even if it's a non-playoff guy, like you're considering adding?
Well, again, rose-colored glasses, but based on what we've seen from this guy this year, 7-1 when he's going to be one of the final 4 guys to qualify. He qualified, I think it was 6th in the spring. Tyler Reddick at 7-1. I expect this number to probably be 5 post practice and qualifying.
450.
Yeah, I don't see this getting longer because he's got all of Toyota backing him. He's got the best driver from the spring and Christopher Bell giving him information.
Yeah, if you somehow have Blaney, Byron, and Logano, but don't have Reddick, I think 7's great.
Yeah.
If you have Blaney, Byron, and Reddick, I think 7 is fine. Logano. And obviously, they might not win the race and win the championship. We've seen it happen, but I think both of them are very much in play to win both the race and the championship. I think
Yeah,
Larson's a value. I know his teammate's going to be racing for a title, and maybe he'll end up backing off at the end, but there's something about Kyle Larson that just if he gets out to clean air and he has the race and he's the dominant car, he's just going to
the
do it.
one
He
the
doesn't care.
one thing I will say about Larson Elliott, also during this little media stream today, William Byron said it feels great to have the entire Hendrick garage around my car helping to prepare. So not that that's going to take away from what Larson or Elliott are able to do this weekend, but them not fully focusing on this race the same way that William Byron is,
Yeah.
it's fair to assume that from a Hendrick perspective, their entire goal is to put William Byron in the best car that they can produce out of that garage, even if that sacrifices the run of the rest of their guys.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot less likely that if one car shows up as a rocket ship that it's not the 24.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's why I'm a little scared off by the HMS guys, just because with everything that happened surrounding the end of Martinsville and Byron advancing and Bell not, I think this would be a big misstep by them to not provide Byron with a car capable of winning and then have him get showed up by Kyle Larson or Chase Elliott. Like
Put
that
like
would not be a
spikes
great
and
look.
stuff on it so when people try and take him off the track.
Yeah, he's got like the
Like
50s
yeah,
angled
little
spikes coming out of the hubcaps.
twisted metal style with like battle
Yeah,
armor and stuff.
yeah, exactly.
All right. So qualifying
Oh,
bets.
yep.
You told me you fired on this. I think it's a
Yes,
great bet.
I am adding that to the card. I don't understand why that's so heavily juiced towards Blaney.
We both think Blaney is going to be awesome and probably qualifies really well. But
All of
like,
them are.
yeah, exactly. It shouldn't be this big of a gap. So if you can get like plus
No.
140, it's fine.
And to be honest with you, that might be one of my only bets that we add for the show, just because there's
Yeah, I don't know how much I'm going to be firing on this race, to be honest. This one's interesting to me. I like Chastain. I think he could be really good. But the fact that I get Busher and Brad, who, even though they're not like the greatest here, they do know how to manufacture track position. We've seen
exactly.
Busher be really good here. Um,
I trust them exponentially more than I do Chastain and Suarez.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Suarez, I don't even really factor him, and maybe I should, but I don't know.
That's so messed up, man.
Reddick
The
is
one
sort
thing
of
I
interesting.
so I will say non-playoff driver matchups this week I think are definitely in play. So like for instance, Kyle Larson versus Denny Hamlin. When you look at past races at this track, even when Kyle Larson gets a shit car, that team is just so much better
Yeah.
of getting better as the race goes on. And so if you can find Larson at minus 110 anywhere, I don't mind firing on that right now because
Yep.
despite that whole garage going to help William Byron, I expect Kyle Larson to have a top 10 car.
Yeah,
Whereas
and we've
Hamlin,
talked
like,
about
might check
Denny
out.
at Phoenix, and we never really saw it. That's why
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
never betting the 7 or 6 or 5. But when I saw 20, 25, and I knew what other
Oh,
tickets I
yeah.
had to jump on it.
And I mean, he was good here in the spring too. He qualified on the pole. He had in clean air, he was fine, but he got run down by Reddick. So, he was not the best car. They talked about it all day. They battled an unbalanced car for the entirety of that race until he spun himself out and then took himself out of contention.
Yeah, I don't love much they have to offer.
So, if you scroll all the way to the bottom though of this, I think there's value in betting Blaney over Bell. When you account for the playoff versus non-playoff driver narrative and what we've seen Penske do here before and how good Ryan Blaney is at this track in the fall, I definitely think that could be a matchup that winds up with Blaney finishing top 5 and Christopher Bell finishing 12th.
Yeah,
You know,
I think that's very reasonable.
oh, one more little thing that I figured out. Since the current NASCAR playoff format began in 2014, there has been at least 2 of the 4 playoff drivers finishing inside the top 3 in all but one championship race, which was 2016, and the second guy finished 4th that race. So I think if you can find like little parlays and round robin, like both to top 3 or both to top 5 stuff on the playoff guys, I think there's definitely a world where you could hit on a bunch of those because outside of the 2 of 3, most of the time these guys are finishing within the top 5 of each other, all inside the top 5 too. So
Yeah, unless someone wrecks or has an issue. The
yeah,
Chastain number is tempting, but 225 feels
that's what I mean.
a
Like,
little short. But he's done 6th, 1st, 24th, 3rd, and 2nd. And the year he finished 24th, he was 7th and 9th after stage 1 and stage 2. So, and then like the Briscoe number, but plus 140 to top 10.
I think that opened at 2. That's been bet. Yeah, that's been bet down. Yeah, I would much rather bet like Busher and Keselowski on like a top 5 right now because they're like 5 or 6 to 1. I want to get paid on something like that.
Do you have any interest in Brad or Busher at 15 to 1 to top 4? I know we love
No,
Ryan Blaney, and I guess it's hard because Logano's there too, and that's why they're priced
exactly.
accordingly. The odds of both of them crashing or having issues and ending up behind those guys, but it is tempting.
And that's what I was just going to say is that had only one of them been in the championship 4, I think you could make a case for going to the longer shot guys in the Ford camp. Like, okay, Toyota market. Tyler Reddick at plus 270 to finish as the top Toyota. I know Christopher Bell was great here in the spring, but again, the playoff narrative is real. Like these guys come with souped up cars versus the rest of the field.
Honestly, if I'm betting top Toyota and it's not Tyler Reddick, it's either Truex or maybe Gibbs.
Yeah, I don't
I
mind
know
those numbers
Truex
either.
has been a weird to the end, and he's kind of out to lunch, and I didn't want him
Last
for a
race.
long time. But I have just a little bit of interest. Just a little bit.
I do think that the top Chevy market is much more open than the
Oh,
rest
yeah.
of them because, again, you only have one guy in
The only
Byron
thing
in the
is,
championship.
I have a hard time. Like the reason I like these markets is because I think a lot of the guys that are at the elite end are a little more boom bust, and I think Ryan Blaney's or not Ryan Blaney, William Byron's so rock solid.
Yeah,
Like I have a hard time seeing him not finish like
fourth or fifth.
fourth,
Yeah.
fifth, sixth, something like that. And maybe he's not the top Chevy, but I think in that scenario, Larson or Elliott or Chastain is winning, or at least top 3. So it's hard for me to pull the trigger.
I hear you on that, but I just think the fact that you're getting basically you're just playing against the one guy there because if Byron has an issue, how many times have we seen Kyle Larson be the best car on track this year? And I know I just talked about him not being that as good as Byron because they're all going to be focusing on Willie B. But what if he has an issue early? Like I would easily say you'll never see Kyle Larson priced at plus 280 to be a top Chevy unless it's a super speedway.
Well, and you get better numbers in some of the top 3 stuff. So it's like maybe it is worth taking a shot on. Because like Larson was 250, it's 280. Chastain was like 4 something, and he's 550. I don't know.
I do
Let
think
us
you're
know
right on
down
the
in the
Chastain
comments what
call.
you guys are betting this week. I'm curious. Brian and I are in a precarious position, both holding what we're holding and not really loving the numbers. And I think the one thing that we've gotten a lot better, Brian, about doing is not loading up our betting card prior to practice and qualifying.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes we miss numbers and sometimes we miss value. We have so much more information that even betting it at 550 instead of 8, betting it at 750 instead of 10. Yes, we're missing out on a little juice, but we're also missing out on the guy absolutely stinking it up and becoming 14 to 1 at 10 from 10, becoming 950, and then we're getting value on race day, even if we like them. Like I need more information. Once I have the information, I can make decisions. So
Yeah, and
I'm happy to be patient.
yeah, on that note, I did just add the Truex at 22 to 1 over at DK to the card. One last time, baby. One last time.
Yeah. Let's see what DraftKings has. Anything else? Is it just outrights there?
No, they actually they have some
bunch of
props.
stuff.
They got a couple matchups. I have noticed that their site's been super wonky when you click on things that like resets to the main page all the time. Yeah, you gotta love these guys' UI.
Yeah, I mean that Blaney 130 when you can get it. Or no, who was he going up against? Bell?
It was Bell, yeah.
Minus 140 versus Logano. Reddick at minus 105 versus Byron.
I think at that point you just take like a top 3, which is going to be a better number.
Yeah.
So that way you don't even have to battle Byron. The difference between like a playoff driver versus playoff driver and then a non-playoff driver versus a playoff driver is you're leveraging the fact that they're getting the souped up car versus the guy that's not, and they could still finish as the 4th best playoff guy and finish 4th.
Yeah.
That's just kind of the way that I'm looking at this race. And I think if you go back and you look at our championship card from last year, we were very light as well, outside of like the Blaney stuff. And then I think we had a couple of placements, but
yeah, and we didn't even really have like the odds that we have right now. So I think that's
exactly. Yeah.
If you have access to 365, you get 325 on Reddick. I don't hate it. Oh, it's pretty gross. Yeah. Ugh. Okay. Well, it was fun to get back. It was fun to chat about the week that was. We'll be back one final time to get you set for the final race of the NASCAR season. We'll have DraftKings thoughts. We'll, I assume, have bets for our betting card. Brian, you added a couple things, right? I should show that before we log out.
Yeah, so I did the qualifying.
You added the qualifying bet at plus 140, which I like, and then you added Truex 22-1.
Yeah, and then I will be at the track Saturday, so hopefully I can find someplace quiet and we can record.
Yeah, if you're in Phoenix, track Brian down. He'll be at the media center probably a good chunk of the time. But if you
I'm gonna live there.
DM him and you're there, he'll come say hello. But yeah, we're gonna try and figure out recording from Phoenix. It'll be interesting, but I'm sure we'll get it done. We always do. We'll talk bets. We'll talk
DraftKings. Most important race of the year.
Yeah, the final race of the year.
So sad.
It's been a hell of a season. It's been a fun one. Let's cash some tickets to end this thing. We'll be back Saturday. We'll be back post-championship to recap it all.
Hopefully celebrating our Tyler Reddick.
Yeah, either with like a Ryan Blaney or Tyler Reddick flag over our shoulders. If there's stuff you guys would like to see during the off season, holler. Brian and I are trying to be good about when we see future odds drop, at least getting something out. So if you are not subscribed yet, you should. That way, if there is value in the off season, we can potentially try and get some guests. We haven't really been as good about that this year, but the way the scheduling's gone and stuff, it's been kind of messy. But if you guys would like to see guests, holler. If you have off-season show ideas, holler. Or if you're just like, you know what, I turned my NASCAR brain off for 3 months and turn it back on end of January, also holler, because then we can make decisions about allocating time and resources and whatnot. But we appreciate everybody who is stuck with us this far. We truly appreciate all y'all. The Grid Rivals League is coming down to the end.
Kyle just passed me.
I passed Brian, so that's all I needed to do. But there is still 2 people in front of me, so make sure that if you're one of those 2 people, you know how to get a hold of us on Twitter, because we will be giving you a prize, and we will connect with you and figure out what you want. But that's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll recap. We'll be back on Saturday-ish to recap it all in your feed Sunday morning. Talking the final race of the NASCAR season, and then we'll wave a long bye-bye from our mega yacht in the middle of the Caribbean. That's Brian Twining. I'm Kyle Robert. We appreciate y'all. We'll talk to you next time. Dude, I have a 50 on Briscoe staring